Welcome to day 2 of ABY camp lessons. I'm going to start with just reading the text. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who was the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, and locked and sealed it over him, to keep him from deceiving the nations any more until the 1,000 years were ended. After that he must be set free for a short time. I saw thrones on which were seated those who had been given authority to judge, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of Christ. They had not worshipped the beast or its image, and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy are those who share in the first resurrection. The second death has no power over them. They will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison, and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night, forever and ever. Then I saw a great white throne, and him who was seated on it. The earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books. The sea gave up its dead that were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them, and each person was judged according to what they had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. That was straight up apocalyptic. There's a lot to unpack in this text, but I will be short. I do have a question before I start. If you had a way to time travel, such as in Back to the Future or Avengers Endgame, which would you choose? To go to the past or to the future? The text I read is eschatological texts. Eschatology is the part of theology concerned with death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul and of humankind. Christian hope is concerned with eschatology, or the science of things. This definition was from Oxford Languages. How many of you would want to know what would be happening in a day, in a month, in a year, in a decade, which is 10 years, in a century, 100 years, or millennium, 1,000 years, or even longer? To know the future has enthralled mankind since the beginning. But let me attempt to paint a picture, mostly focusing on Revelation 27 through 10, of what this text brings to bear on what the future will look like. The 1,000 years of Satan, the deceiver's imprisonment, are over. The Edenic government, ruled over by Jesus with the saints based around the New Jerusalem, will face an assault, as Satan makes another act of defiance. But it will be his last, as his final judgment comes in the form of fire from heaven, destroying his armies, and him being thrown into the eternal torment of the lake of fire. But why is this important? The Satan, known as the accuser, has been granted authority over this world since the first sin of Adam and Eve. But even before that, he was a created being worshiping God, yet his worship turned inward as he decided he would rather be worshipped. Mankind was God's chosen creation, and Satan chose them, offering them the chance to be like God, knowing good and evil. But without God's omnipotence and omnipresence, we don't know what to do with it. Long story short, man accepted. The consequences being separation from the Edenic state of work and relationship with God. So we are little gods running around this terrestrial ball, searching for meaning, hoping there is not eternal weight to our actions, and hoping we have enough fire insurance to escape hell if it's real. But you don't. Unless you have Jesus as your insurance agent who writes your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. The judge is just, yes. But he has ordained one way to heaven, and his presence, which is where we belong. God came as a man. Jesus, the Lion of Judah, prophesied to trample the head of the serpent, Satan, the Lamb who was slain, doing what no man could, living a sinless holy life, healing the bodies and souls of those he met as he walked on earth, doing the will of the Father, past the grave, as he demonstrated the resurrection power that will be on display when he returns. So now what do we do with this? First, I suggest you get the right agent to represent you before God, because it's either Jesus or Satan. The Bible describes the Lamb's Book of Life, Revelation 3:5. The one who is victorious will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out the name of that person from the book of life, but will acknowledge that name before my Father and his angels. That book will be opened at the white throne judgment, which we will teach about soon. Second, having accepted Jesus as your Savior, you must become more than that. You must listen to what he says you ought to do. So read the Word and seek to understand it. Realize you can't do it alone and seek other Christians. It's easiest to find them at church. God gave Christians community for a reason, that we might help guide one another to him. Thank you, and God bless.